So here's how we query the database. We first initialize a database management system, DBMS object, passing in a data source. If you're not sure where to get your data source from, we'll go through various ways in the presentation. And then we take our query and we wrap it in a query object. And then we execute that query. And we get this iterable of JSON objects as a result. Now, the JSON object is actually implementing map in Java. So anywhere you can use a map, which is generally anywhere you can use an object in a lot of APIs, it will work. And iterable is important because we're going to do a little printout of the results. And you can see that we're using the enhanced for loop. Well, that works not because it's a list, but because it implements iterable. So even though we're streaming the data, we're able to use the enhanced for loop. So we'll print it out, and what do we get? Well, we get the results in JSON. So even though it's a map, it'll print it out in JSON, which makes debugging so much easier. You have no idea. So, okay, great, we printed out some data, but what can we do with that? Well, what we do is we redirect the stream where we need it. In this example, we're exporting the data to a file called example.json, and then we're writing the data to a JSON file by initializing a new JSON output, so that's the format we want, and then we're writing to the target, in this case, a file target, and we're just giving it the stream results, and it takes care of giving us a file that looks like a giant JSON array. Although if you parse it with Convirgance, it will stream it one record at a time. We can easily change that to a different format, like CSV, just by initializing a different output object. So now, different output object, and we'll write it to a different file because it's not JSON anymore. And there you go. With one line, you have got a completely different format. And what's cool here is you'll notice that we've used the stream twice. That's because the iterable is a setup, so it will rerun the query the second time you try and use it. All right, so we've selected the data. Now, how do we put it back in? So we need to read data from a file, so we'll actually put a file source around our example.json. And then we will use a JSON input, so we had JSON output, JSON input to read the file in. And that gives us the same iterable of JSON object. All right. And so now we need to prepare the insert query. Same thing, we connect to DBMS. And here you'll notice that our query has changed slightly. There's now these colon names in here, colon name, colon devices, colon pets. Those are named bind variables. And Convergence is going to take care of automatically injecting those safely under the covers so that the optimizer does what it needs to do. And also, I should point out, those are the same values we selected earlier from the table. So bulk load data, we just do a database update, we give it a batch operation, and bam, we've just inserted 1 record, 10 million records, it doesn't matter, right back in the database. All right, this is too simple, isn't it? It's like, okay, cool, but it's so simple. Yeah, it's simple. But the trick here is that this does work as you start scaling it up. So here we have a web service as a servlet. We've got our URL pattern up there. And you'll notice that we're doing a Jindy lookup in this case to get our data source, right? Because if you're using Java EE, typically you're going to set it up as a Jindy. You can get it any other way you want, but this is pretty typical for a servlet. Now our query is all customers by zip code. So we've got a bind variable here, zip code. And then we are, of course, binding the request parameter for zip code into the query. And again, we are able to initialize JSON output, write it out, and bada boom, bada bang, there you go. You've got your web service, just like that. And the output is just a wrapper around get output stream for the servlet. Okay, let's do it in Spring. So data source in Spring is typically handled by an application properties file. So you can auto-wire it in like this, really easy. And here we've actually moved the SQL into a file in our project. So in our resources directory, we're keeping the SQL there. That lets us use our IDE to color coding, autocomplete, everything that we want out of treating a SQL file as a first-class citizen, which also lets us get a lot more complicated with the SQL. Try putting a 50-line SQL statement into an annotation sometime, and you'll appreciate moving it to another file. So same thing, we just set the binding. Binding is just coming from the URL, right, the get mapping up there, and then passed in. And then you'll notice that we've returned the results of the query, so the iterable JSON object is coming back. That's because Spring, remember how I said that iterable and maps are handled by a lot of APIs automatically. So Spring thinks it's just a list and a map, and so it translates that to JSON by itself, so we don't even have to do it for it. You can, if you want, you can grab the output stream and do it, but you can just let Spring do it.